Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So I'm in Mayfair, London, this decidedly plush area right in the centre of town. And this is a house where Sir Robert Peel spent much of his adult life, so that's his townhouse. So we are a stone's throw from Hyde Park. Down this way is Park Lane, and beyond it's Hyde Park that we can see, the biggest park in central London. Anyway, back to Sir Robert Peel. So he was born in 1788 in Bury, Lancashire. His father was a factory owner, so they're very prominent in that part of the country. There was a town on the Isle of Man called Peel, and I often wonder whether their ancestors hail from that place. But I don't actually know that there were Manx in their ancestry. So yes, his father had made a fortune by modern terms they'd be multi-millionaires, and Peel was one of several children. His father was also Robert Peel, but our Robert Peel wasn't the eldest son. Anyway, he went to Harrow School, which is in London. In those days it was considered a few miles outside London in the county of Middlesex. Middlesex has since been amalgamated into Greater London. So he distinguished himself as an outstanding scholar, though he wasn't that brilliant at sports. And he went up to Christ Church, Oxford. So that's perhaps the noblest college at Oxford University, where he proved himself as a very gifted mathematician. And when he graduated, the system of classification had only just come in. Degree saying it was a first-class degree, a second-class degree, a third-class degree, a fourth-class degree, or a pass. A pass was like that close to failing, although that was obviously a fail. So not all the undergraduates bothered to actually finish their degrees, which is leave after a year or two. And these days, a bachelor's degree is typically 3 years. It can be longer, but in those days, you could take an extra year or two if you felt like it. Anyway, he graduated with a first, and exams were then all spoken and in Latin, and later they turned out to be written. So he threw himself into politics. He was elected for Tamworth in short order. He joined the Tory party. Obviously, parties had a completely informal existence in those days. The Napoleonic Wars were on, and he was a stalwart advocate of fighting to the finish. The Whigs, the party opposite. Some of them said, should we negotiate? There isn't a clear moral cause. We might lose, even if we win. It's too costly. A few of them were radical Whigs who thought that France somehow still embodied the spirit of the French Revolution. The United Kingdom prefers to overlook the fact that many of its allies were absolute monarchs, and Napoleon was actually benign compared to them. Anyway, fight it the UK did, and eventually prevailed, mainly because of its German and Russian allies. Obviously Germany didn't exist as such at the time. So he's up the street. Peel held various offices. Chief Secretary for Ireland. He was briefly elected for Cashel in Ireland, that's in County Tipperary. They wasn't Irish at all and almost never went to Ireland. He helped set up the Irish Peace Preservation Force as a precursor to the police, and some people accuse him of partiality towards the Protestant minority, joke that he was Orange Peel, as in an allusion to the Orange Order, William of Orange. But the Orange Order had been founded, well, only in Peel's childhood, 1795 by most reckonings. There are different versions of that. Anyway, so one of the big issues was Catholic emancipation. He was initially against, eventually went along with it when the Duke of Wellington, the Conservative Prime Minister, decided it must change. The Catholic Association was there in Ireland, headed by Daniel O'Connell, the Liberator. Catholic rent, that's a penny from each household per month if you wanted to join. So-called Catholic rent. You didn't actually have to be a Catholic to join. Almost all the members were Catholics, obviously with the majority of the country at the time. But O'Connell deliberately set the donation very low, not to maximise the yield, but to make ordinary people feel involved, feel they would have ownership in modern phraseology, and their monster meetings. So people thought there was a pre-revolutionary situation in Ireland, which is why the Iron Duke caved in and said, well, it's dangerous to allow Catholic emancipation because they're against parliamentary government and they're absolutists, but it's even more dangerous not to respond to the revolution. So Peel and Wellington decided that together, and there were some Tories who were still against. So there was Catholic emancipation. Then the big issue was the Great Reform Act. Indeed, Great Britain was in a pre-revolutionary situation as well, so it seemed, with huge demonstrations, monster meetings, riots, noblemen's houses burnt down, a lot of hardship, possibly by the end of the Napoleonic Wars, demobilised soldiers quite some time earlier, quite some time before. There'd been the Peterloo Massacre sometime earlier. So radicals were demanding proper reform. And like a letter was sent to the cabinet saying, depend upon it, gentlemen, the country is ripe for revolution. then goodbye to England's king and ministers. So there really was a plan to overthrow and kill all these people. There'd been the Cato Street conspiracy some years before. That's only about a mile behind this house. People planning to kill all the cabinet when they're dining at Lord Harrowby's house. But anyway, it was scotched. So finally, in 1832, it was decided that reform would be brought in, but that's not by the Tories. That's by Earl Grey, a Whig Prime Minister. Some Tories had decided it was necessary. Peel said he couldn't go along with that because he'd seen it as an utter turncoat by the Tories, but had to sort of reluctantly accept it when it came in. All it did was increase the number of men who could vote from perhaps 5% of the population, about 8% of the population. A few men actually lost the vote as a result of it because the franchise was standardised depending on you're a borough, as in a town, or a shire, as in a county, saying if you own property above this rental value, or you rent it and it's above that rental value, you have the right to vote, whereas each constituency had its own rules, and it was completely inconsistent, and making the constituencies less inequitable in terms of population, a redistribution of seats. So that was that. But anyway, he took over leadership of the Tory party and eventually led them back into office. And one of the main things, big issues of his time, was the Corn Laws. Should they be abolished or not? And the Anti-Corn Law League was saying they should. It started to be a mass movement allied to the Chartists, and the Whig Party eventually coming around to view they should be. So Peel is seen as one of the founders of the Conservative Party. So John Wilson Croker had a few years earlier, about 1828, used the phrase the Conservative Party in a magazine. I can't remember which magazine it was. And Peel, in his Tamworth Manifesto, started writing about the Conservative Party. And the Tamworth Manifesto is really the first manifesto, saying a statement of political beliefs and policies, appealing to his electors. And obviously manifesto started to be a national thing. I don't think the word manifesto had been used in that sense in English prior to that time. So when I passed through that Midlands town on the train, I always think of the Tamworth Manifesto. Think of Tamworth pigs. Maybe that'll help you. So the country was industrialising, was most industrialised country in the world, becoming less of an agricultural country. Remember, the Tories instead stand for the landed interests and the Whigs for the moneyed interests, more banking and business. Now, obviously, that's an oversimplification. There are plenty of Whigs who were major landowners, and there were some Tories, and Peel would be an example, whose family money was largely from factories. So the division is not that stark. Anyway, so 1841 he was back as Prime Minister, and gradually he'd been reducing the Corn Laws, the import tax on corn. Late 1846 said, I'm going to phase out in the next few years. There was uproar in his party, and eventually forced out. Took about a third of the party with him, Peelites, and they coalesced with the Liberals for a while. Then that's when the Earl of Aberdeen was Prime Minister. The United Kingdom's only ever Peelite Prime Minister. But some people regard him as a Liberal, even though he wasn't officially. So there we are. So Peel had stood down. He'd taken W.E. Gladstone with him, rising, stern, unbending Tories who agreed with him on this one, had a bit of a road to Damascus conversion on it. Peel, quite a pragmatist, being willing to increase the Maynooth grant. That's the subvention that the government paid to this Catholic seminary in Ireland to try and keep the Catholic clergy on side. Well, Peel was married, he had several children. One of his sons became a general. Some of his sons followed into politics, but none achieved that great distinction. So, Peel, he was riding when he was thrown by his horse, I think, onto his pommel, which caused some internal bleeding, and that's how he died in 1850. So a very notable political figure. Robert Peel was much earlier, and he helped found the Metropolitan Police. That was an exception because the metropolis was so big and lawless. They felt they needed to do it. A parliamentary commission had said that establishing a police force was incompatible with a free society, saying it's the kind of thing that a continental tyrant might do, and we can't have these people poking their noses into our business and manhandling us and depriving us of our liberties. But anyway, that's why police were known as bobbies or peelers. I heard people say peeler in Northern Ireland in the 90s, but I don't think anyone says that anymore. Perhaps not even Bobby these days. That's one of his lasting legacies, some banking acts and so on. He's not really remembered as foreign policy Prime Minister. Well, that's just a little bit about Sir Robert Peel. Toodaloo.